Hi folks, I'm Greg Adamore, your host for Experts of Southern Nevada. And today I'm delighted to bring our Attorney General of the state of Nevada, Catherine Cortez Mastos, to share with us some of the insights and some of the developments that have been occurring in the state as far as legislation. Currently we have 284, Assembly Bill 284 and Assembly Bill 300. A lot of us realtors are calling our office a lot for guidance, keep us out of trouble, and help the homeowners who are upside down or who are facing these difficult times since the market tanked. And how long have you been the Attorney General, and how'd you get into that type of work?
Into politics. I've been the Attorney General since January 2007. It is the first office I ever ran for in politics and won, and it's been an incredible experience. Just a fantastic office, and enjoy the people I work with. And how bad can it be to represent the state of Nevada? It's been the best job, and tried to make the most of it and work with so many people on issues that we're dealing with in our community, like the issues we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I know I've attended several of the panels that you put on. I know you're very hardworking. You travel in the state everywhere, and we're thrilled to have you on to take time out of your busy schedule. And I guess the legislature just got done convening for this year.
That's right.
So there's been some changes. Can we talk a little bit about Assembly Bill 284? I know you helped craft that, and that really did a lot of help for us. And how's that been received?
Well, now, the Assembly Bill 284, that was passed in the 2011 legislative session, and that was to address the robo-signing we were seeing here in the state of Nevada, and that was the foreclosures that were occurring without all of the documents being signed, or the illegal documents. And so literally that was a combination of working with our county recorders, working with people in the community, hearing from constituents, getting complaints, and realizing we needed to kind of stem that tide. We needed to stop those illegal foreclosures from happening. And so we worked with our legislators, and particularly Marcus Conklin at the time, who was majority leader at the time, and it was his bill that we worked on to pass, AB 284, to really address that robo-signing. And what it did was, which was unique in the state of Nevada now, it required anybody who was moving forward with a foreclosure, whether you're a default servicer or a bank working with a default servicer, you really had to prepare and sign an affidavit with certain information on it, basically attesting to the fact that this property is legally in foreclosure and moving through that process. And you had to base the information that you had that it was in foreclosure on personal knowledge. And so that was a big piece of this. Another piece was the enforcement mechanism. If for some reason somebody went into foreclosure and it was illegally foreclosed, then my office could take action, or there was even a private right of action. The homeowner could take action on their own. My action, if we were to get involved, there were criminal sanctions associated with that. Now, keep in mind, prior to 284, there already was an enforcement mechanism, and there were criminal sanctions. At the time, though, it was a misdemeanor. This bill increased that to a felony. And so that's what the bill was intended to do, and it did do that. It stopped the wholesale robo-signing that we were seeing in our state, and slowed down and stopped those types of illegal foreclosure from going on. And that was passed in 2011. And we, working with everybody in the community, like any bill, once it gets implemented, you want to make sure it's good legislation, good consequences attached to it. It is achieving the goals that everybody had intended. And it did. And there's no doubt about it. But I think we were also hearing from members in the community, realtors, title companies, some of the banks, that there needed to be clarification around some of the provisions in 284. And they were legitimate because, it's the first time we put that out there. Certain terms weren't defined. The affidavit was new. There was not a form, developed for the affidavit. We were relying on the industry to develop that form themselves. And so there were still a lot of questions, and rightfully so. And so that's kind of what took us into working in my office. Actually, I put together a working group to really take a look at some of those concerns. And that's what you see the fruits of all of our work over the course of the 2 years is AB 300, which passed out of this legislative session.
Okay, so it's evolved from the 284, and then we'll talk about that in a minute. As a realtor practicing in the community for almost 35 years, I was faced with people calling me up and, hey, Greg, we don't know if we're going to have a home tomorrow. What am I going to tell my teenage kids? They're middle school, high school. The bank sent us these letters. There's blue tape. They're in a panic. they're nervous, there's a lot of anxiety. And once you pass that bill, it seemed to kind of calm their nerves a little bit, help them to focus, get back to work, and realize that it was more of a level playing field, that the banks just couldn't have robo-signing or couldn't have with MERS or some electronic loan servicers just send them paper, because a lot of them just got panicked and moved out. And a lot of people were very intimidated. And so I think working in the industry and feeling the pulse of the city and talking to people on a regular basis, trying to give them assurances, I think some of the stuff that you helped pass really gave the economy and the individuals in our community a chance to kind of recover and maybe get their second wind and go out there and try to refocus, get a different job, or try to do a loan modification or a short sale. Once a bank didn't have the big hammer that they could hit everybody or steamroll them over, I think they realized they had options, and they would start talking to realtors and to attorneys to find out what their options are. And from my point of view, looking at it, it seems that people who might have been homeless have now had a chance to get their feet back on the ground, maybe get back to work, or negotiate something with the bank, or a short sale to get out of that debt. And then, of course, that's good for our economy.
It is, and you know this better than anyone practicing in the industry. When the housing crisis hit us, it was not only a housing crisis; it was highest unemployment rate in the country. So we had those two things that hit us so hard that literally had an impact on whether a homeowner can keep that home. Because not only are we dealing with this housing crisis all of a sudden, now we have people potentially out of a job. We have people also potentially having serious medical issues who now are out of a job, who need a home to live in, but now possibly losing their home as well because of everything that's happened with the residential-backed mortgages that were securitized on Wall Street. And so there was a combination of things that were happening. At the end of the day, however, for my purposes, when we started receiving complaints from homeowners about what was happening to them and whether there were violations of state law, that was our goal, was to really address those issues and help those homeowners who were struggling. It was all about alternatives to foreclosure. It was how do we work with families to keep them in their homes, to make sure that if they are on tough times because they've lost a job, can we still stabilize their home life by keeping in that home, saving that roof. And by the way, if we can't, because not everybody could stay in their home, they couldn't afford it, can we find a way to get them the answers as quickly as they need from the lender to say, okay, listen, there's nothing more we can do, you need to move, and then get them the resources they need to make that decision to move. And that's all we were asking. But unfortunately, as we moved through this process, we were finding that the banks and the lenders weren't giving us the answers quickly. They weren't working with the homeowners to try to either keep them in their home, or if they couldn't stay, find alternatives to that, and work with the homeowners, or give them answers in a timely manner so the homeowner can make a decision. And so that really was the challenge that we were seeing, and that's why my office took action against Bank of America, why we took action against Wells Fargo and a number of other banks, why we've taken action against some of the Wall Street players, whether it's Morgan Stanley and some of the other players there that actually we're still working on and will become public in another couple of months. But really the intent was for those people or those agencies that caused and helped cause some of this problem, we need to go after them, hold them accountable, and then bring that monetary relief or whatever relief we can back to the homeowner. And during this time, there's no doubt homeowners lost their homes, unfortunately. And there was then, besides all of that happening, then you had the robo-signing. Comes to light that the mass production of foreclosures, just because they're all out there and getting them through, no matter how the documents are legitimate they are or not. And so that was another issue that we wanted to address and deal with and stop, so that we could, again, help the homeowner hopefully stay in the home. But if they couldn't, give them the answers they need in a timely fashion, move it out. But by the way, they shouldn't have to succumb to an illegal foreclosure, based on everything else they're dealing with. Why is that something added to it? And so those were kind of the issues that we were dealing with, and that's why not only we were looking at actions that we could take against banks and other agencies to hold them accountable, that's why we also looked at the National Mortgage Settlement and participated in the settlement at the end of the day, because it was going to bring monetary relief to homeowners. It was going to change the servicing standards for 5 largest banks, including Bank of America, which is one of the largest banks, playing in the mortgage industry here in Nevada. And so it was also changing their conduct so that they are hopefully helping the homeowner, getting them the answers they need in a timely fashion.
That's right. And some of the things that I think that were occurring before, a lot of folks were trying to come into me and say, Greg, well, I want to do a short sale, but they're offering me a loan modification. And on the phone, they were saying, well, we can record this, and we are debt collectors. And a lot of times, it appeared that, well, they're sometimes giving false hopes to some homeowners, or maybe it wasn't intentional, maybe it was. But a lot of times they're also, it's like turning over 2 egg timers. One of them here is like we're dealing with a loan modification, but we also have a legal department that's foreclosing on your home. And so 3 or 4 months go by and they think that they might be working out, reconciling the problem or mitigating the problem. A lot of people were just getting kind of torpedoed with a blue tape, and you have 3 days or 30 days to get out of your home, and a realtor shows up. And I think a lot of the protections that came forth from that legislation really did help settle a lot of those issues.
And it was, that goes to the servicing conduct, and you actually basically explained, what part of the problem was when a homeowner called, because what we were finding is the lenders that they were supposed to be working with had staff in various parts of different cities working on different things and not communicating. So when a homeowner went into default and went down, as soon as that default occurred, they would go down a dual path, a track with that lender, automatically go into a foreclosure process, and then the other line was modification. And the staff that were working with that lender on both of those tracks didn't communicate and didn't share information, didn't share documentation, didn't talk to one another about the timelines. And so that's why you found a homeowner thought they were getting a trial mod and actually may have even started with trial payments, and then all of a sudden their home gets foreclosed upon. It's because you had that dual track process with the lenders, and that was part of the servicing conduct changes that were mandated from the National Mortgage Settlement and that litigation. They had to stop that dual track process. They had to give the homeowner an opportunity to see if they could save that home through a trial modification. And so those were, when I talk about some of the changes in the servicing conduct, those are some of the changes. Along with a single point of contact, because we were hearing homeowners would submit documentation, it would get lost, they'd get routed to 2 or 3 or 5 different people, they'd have to start all over again, and we said, no, that's just crazy. You need one person, knows that homeowner, works with their file, and walks them through that process when they're dealing with that lender. So those were a couple of things that were in there. There were actually over 300 is that right? 300 servicing standards that were changed, and there was a lot to it. A lot of it with timelines that were now mandated and different types of activities that had to change. Now, we recently received a report from an independent monitor that we have hired as part of the national settlement to verify whether the banks are complying or not. And his first report came out, and it shows that some of the banks have still not satisfied all of the servicing conduct that they're required. They're violating some of the metrics that have been set up. And so we are continuing to monitor them, hold them accountable. They need to have the opportunity to cure, but at the same time, if they don't fix these types of conduct, then we are going to go back to court and fine them monetarily. At the same time, mandate that they still make those changes and help the homeowner at the end of the day.
Yeah, recently I was working on a file on a short sale, and Bank of America was sent it to a different servicer, and we already had an approval for a co-op where a seller was going to get a little relocation money, and that was their primary incentive. And they said, well, all the ones we transferred, all bets are off. It's to start over and do a traditional short sale. So, and with them in the middle of the stream to change that, it was kind of well, too bad for us.
Yeah,
and
things
still happen, I guess.
Right, but you know what? And that was part of the reason why, even after the settlement, I went out and talked to the realtors and made sure I was explaining what the settlement was about, because there was no doubt in my mind the banks were still going to continue some of this conduct to the detriment of the homeowner. And I wanted to know about it. And so we would go out and literally went out and talked to as many people as possible to make them aware of not only the National Mortgage Settlement monetary relief, but the servicing conduct. And if it's still occurring, file a complaint with my office, file a complaint with the independent monitor, so we can continue to hold these banks accountable, particularly if that type of conduct is still happening in the state of Nevada.
It's very comforting to know. Is there a website for your office? Where would somebody who wanted to make a complaint or have an inquiry, would they go to the Attorney General's website? Or
correct. It's ag.nv.gov. But they can literally go on an internet engine and just, put in Nevada Attorney General, and it will populate. It should be the first one that comes up. But yes, they can go on my website, talks about all of that information, tells them how they can file a complaint, and who the contact person is in my office. We then also share those complaints with the independent monitor. So we're coordinating. Not only that, Nevada sits on a monitoring committee for the National Mortgage Settlement. There's a monitoring committee made up of some states and some federal agencies. That was one of the things I fought for as part of our settlement, to sign on. I wanted to be on that monitoring committee. I wanted to see if the banks were going to be complying or not. So we've developed an infrastructure in my office to really coordinate the complaints that come in, shooting them up to individuals within the various banks where the complaints come to make sure there's corrective action, and then keeping track of them so we can see if the banks are violating any of the terms of the national settlement.
Well, that's great for our viewers. I know I contacted your office and spoke with Ms. Lopez. She was very, very helpful. She's got a great staff that can help you. And Jennifer Lopez, I think I don't mind saying that if it's okay.
J-Lo for sure.
J-Lo, yeah, she was very, very wonderful in helping me. And when we have questions, it's nice to know our viewers can call in your office and that you're there to protect the little guy and the homeowners and keep it a level playing field. We talked a little bit about the Assembly Bill 300, and that kind of evolved out of the 284. What kind of changes should we be looking for in the landscape as far as now that this new bill has come out?
Right. So really, the AB 300 was just to clarify some of the terms of the AB 284. And what I mean by that, clarify what personal knowledge means. Because what we were hearing is that there was concern not only from the banks on what personal knowledge meant if they signed off on an affidavit, because they're going to be held accountable for that. So we wanted to help clarify that. We were also hearing from the title companies that because there was no form for the affidavit, or because there were no guarantees on the clarification and what was required in the affidavits, they weren't sure which forms they could rely on to insure the property. And so there was a lot of questions. We literally had a working group from legislators to, like I said, title insurance companies, realtors, all of the banks, and really just coming together to address these issues. So that's what AB 300 does. It further clarifies what's required in the affidavit, what we define as personal knowledge, what documents that the banks have to rely on, more information for the homeowner when that affidavit goes out, so that the homeowner knows when they receive a potential default notice why it's occurring, what's happening, how much money is owed, what they can do to correct that deficiency or not. So there's a number of issues there that we've done to clarify it. And that was really it. We didn't change the enforcement mechanism. We still kept the affidavit, which was an important part of ensuring that we engaged in legal foreclosures and not illegal foreclosures, so we're holding everybody accountable. Like I said, it was a good working group. When we got to the legislative session, Assemblyman Jason Frierson, who really took the lead on introducing this bill for us, because he was on the working group from the very beginning. Senator Roberson was there as well. They were instrumental in helping us, working with our working group, getting it passed through the legislature.
Can we expect a lot more foreclosures, more notices of default? You said NOD is kind of a buzzword in the industry, but notice of default, when a lot of people haven't got a notice for the last 2 or 3 years, maybe where they're recovering, or maybe they haven't been able to catch up. But we could probably anticipate now that it's a little easier for the banks to, if they don't have personal knowledge, but if there's some assurance that it's a legitimate note and deed of trust on a property. Now, I guess we can expect more properties to come on the market and more notice of defaults.
Yeah, that I can't answer, because the definition of inventory depends on who you talk to for the shadow inventory that's out there. I will tell you this: the banks told me that AB 284 slowed down the process for them to initiate those NODs, and so by clarifying this language for them, giving giving them the information they need, hopefully it doesn't slow down that process. Now, will it, increase more NODs? I guess it depends on whether there's the inventory or not. I don't think the two have anything to do with one another, quite frankly. And I think what I find is the banks define shadow inventory differently than the realtors define shadow inventory. But yes, it should give the banks at least the comfort that they need to move through that foreclosure process, if that's the case. The intent of 284 and AB 300 was not to stop the legal foreclosures. Absolutely not.
Just to do it legally.
And I absolutely get that there's some people that need to be foreclosed upon, and there's some people that are gaming the system that need to be foreclosed upon. This does not prevent the banks from doing that. In fact, the banks can do that much faster now in the normal course than they could under 284. So it's really now going to be up to the banks, the actions that they're going to take, and based on the information they have to foreclose or not.
Okay, so they probably won't have to use judicial foreclosures or other methods now. As long as they follow the proper procedures, then the banks are protected as well as the public.
Yes, under AB 300, that was the intent.
If someone were to start and initiate a short sale now, can they expect a notice of default to be filed, or once the short sale process is seriously engaged, does that stop the notice of default process or the foreclosure process, or is that dual tracking too?
Yeah, I can't answer that. I will tell you this. My understanding is as soon as that process occurs, the default, there is a dual track that's going to happen. But the timing within which they move down the foreclosure and go to NOD will be slowed down to some extent if they're going through a trial mod or trying to short sell. So in other words, there is no separate track. They're communicating now.
I see.
And so the intent, under the terms of the National Mortgage Settlement, for those 5 banks that are participating. Now remember, just the banks that are participating, and it's for their mortgages that they own in their portfolio. That's what the National Settlement applies to. It does not apply to Fannie and Freddie loans, okay? But yes, that intent is to now make sure that they're coordinating with one another. They give the homeowner the opportunity to short sell, to modify, whatever it is, the alternative foreclosure. They give that homeowner the opportunity first to do that before they will foreclose. But yes, there is a time where they're still going to be moving down the same path. But the timelines are a little different now, and to the benefit of the homeowner.
I've got a special client asked me Jim and Marianne asked me if they have a non-Freddie Mac loan. They wondered if HARP would extend to them. Is that going to extend beyond just Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, or have you got any definitions on that?
Yeah, those are federal loans, so I'm not sure yet where they are on that. I know the intent there really was to address the Fannie and Freddie loans, and rightfully so, because we know Fannie and Freddie weren't even engaging in principal reductions.
Yeah, that's true.
And in Nevada, my understanding was 60% of the mortgages were owned by Fannie and Freddie. So we needed more activity with Fannie and Freddie working with us in the homeowners loans. So I haven't heard anything at the federal level whether that was going to be broadened to non-Fannie and Freddie loans.
And as far as the shadow inventory we mentioned as a buzzword also, any numbers thrown around? I mean, the banks have a number. We see a lot of blighted homes, a lot of empty homes. Homeowners are wondering, people moved out. The banks haven't been able to take clear title to it yet. I don't know if that shadow inventory depends.
I don't know. And again, that was one of the reasons why I tried to bring the banks together with everybody to understand what was going on with the shadow inventory. And really the question to the banks was why it took them so long to move through a foreclosure if they clearly knew either the house was abandoned or somebody hadn't been making payments for the last year, 2 years, or 3 years.
Nothing's been done.
And I didn't want our 284, now AB 300, to be hindering that. It's not hindering that.
That's right.
And so I don't know that answer, and that really is a question for the banking community to figure out why that's not moving through the process much quicker now. Now, I will say this. There was talk to try to figure out how we can identify those, at least the abandoned property, and really move those through the foreclosure process much quicker. And I think there still is an appetite by many to try to do that. With respect to those homeowners who are still in their homes and not making payments, from at least when I've talked to the banks, when it comes to their attention, they're going to move on it and try to move them through foreclosure. I think the challenge for the banks is, what I am hearing is they don't necessarily always have the feet on the ground to be able to say whether a homeowner or a house is abandoned or not, and or whether that homeowner is still there not making payments. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But really, that's a question for the banks.
There's another Home Again program. Can you tell us what that is?
I will, yes, thank you. So the Home Again program is really short of calling it a program, it's really an infrastructure. And what it is intended to do is a one-stop shop for the homeowner to help the homeowner really understand what's happening with their home, and are they able to save it, and or if they're not, what are their alternatives to foreclosure they can engage in before they have to go to foreclosure. And the reason why we created this program, and it actually was created from the national settlement. When we entered into the national settlement, there's $25 billion set aside nationally, and that was broken down into various pots of money. So there was $17 billion for various forms of relief for the homeowner, from principal reduction, short sales, and cash for keys, those types of things.
Sure.
And then there was another pot of money that was set aside for refinances, for homeowners who are upside down but still making their payments and they want to engage in refinance. Yeah. Then there was another pot of money that was set aside, is about $1.5 billion. For the refinancing was $3 billion. For this pot of money was about $1.5 billion for those homeowners who lost their home to foreclosure. Okay. And we actually were giving them cash checks back nationally. And then there was a money set aside that was to go to the states. It was about, I can't even remember, $4 billion, not a lot of money, but it was to go to the states to support the housing counseling programs and legal aid within those states. Nevada received, as part of the national mortgage settlement, $52 million to come into the state for that purpose. And so instead of just giving the money to the housing counselors here in the state and legal aid, what I essentially did was bring together all of our HUD housing counselors and our legal aid programs statewide and say, how do we use this money to the benefit of our homeowners? And so that's when they really came up with the idea of this infrastructure, a one-stop shop, that a homeowner can make one call. If they need assistance, then they will get routed to a housing counselor who will sit with them for free, go over their home financial needs, and then see if they're eligible for various programs that exist, whether it's at the federal level or this national settlement, those types of things.
How do they contact, get information? Is there a contact point for the
They can actually go back to my website, ag.nv.gov. There is a website for Home Again Nevada. There is a website, even if they just do a search engine and say Home Again Nevada, it will go to them. There's a separate website that they can go to. There's a phone number that they can call. The phone number is actually 1-855-HLP, the number 4 NEV, Help for Nevada.
Okay, we'll put that on the teleprompt.
And we'll get you all that information.
And finally, when we have a couple minutes left, if someone feels they've been a victim of a fraud, a victim of foreclosure scams or something, what can they do for help?
Contact my office.
Contact your office again?
That's literally what we've been dealing with alongside everything else we've been helping the homeowner is really investigating or prosecuting for those foreclosure scams. Unfortunately, we're still seeing a lot of it. And so we can't help homeowner unless they contact our office. So file a complaint with my office. I have a whole separate criminal fraud team that investigates and prosecutes those cases.
Yeah, they must be keeping you busy.
They do. Keeps them busy.
Yeah, we're so thankful that you could be here today. And again, today's guest is Catherine Cortez Mastos, who's taken time out of her busy schedule to come in and help us, give us some advice. I know you've been a great resource for us at the Board of Realtors and helping us stay abreast of the changes so we can help our clients. And again, I really thank you. I've always looked at you as a champion for the people. You've done so much to help homeowners here get back on their feet, help the economy recover, and it's helped the community a lot. A lot of people don't really see the big picture, but working in the community, the little foot soldier out there feeling the pulse of the city all the time. I know that people have spent more money, they've been able to buy more cars, they've been able to do things while they're recovering and trying to get back on their feet instead of just losing their entire savings. So you've helped a lot of people, literally, probably saved a lot of lives here financially and literally. So we thank you so much for all you're doing and continue to do representing the state of Nevada. And we hope that we can maybe show you to come back another time and keep us informed and help us with making informed decisions. And again, what we'll do is we'll put your website on the bottom for our viewers. And I want to thank you again for coming in. Look forward to seeing our viewers next Tuesday at 5 o'clock. And again, thank you, Catherine Cortez Mastos, Attorney General of the State of Nevada, for your time today and coming.
Thank you. And can I just say that the Realtors have been great partners. So thank you so much for everything that you've done to work with us to help the homeowners.
We're blessed to have you. Thank you for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Have a great day.